You're live.
Okay, cool. Well, hi everybody. Welcome. I am Sir Mikolai, and this is Maiman art style class. We're basically going to go over the Maiman style of Viking art and how the structure of it and all that kind of stuff. So I think Willow is going to be our moderator. So if you have questions and I'm not answering or something, if I don't see hands up in the chat or something, I think she'll help us with that. So that's to get started. So yeah, kind of the overview. There's going to be 3 parts to it today. The first thing we're going to do, we're going to spend a little time talking about the history of the Viking art style, and then the Maiman one in particular. And we'll look at some examples from period, and then we will go ahead, and then we're going to talk about some rules for construction, the basics of how to go about doing something, and then we're going to spend probably the last half of the class drawing a design and working that out. So if you have any questions, a small enough group here, just shout out throughout as we go. I don't think it'll be any problem. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
I could start. I'm Mrs. Willow McMurray from, oh wow, it's been so long, from Hell's Gate, in the middle of the kingdom.
I'm Harold Bossy from Finnegoth.
I'm Eleonora. I'm from Steps.
And then the other one that you see, it's I think it's listed as Baronova Uliana. That's my wife's account. I'm logged into there. I'm going to use that camera to draw here for the later half of it. So cool. Well, welcome. And yeah, let's get started. So how do I do this? Screen share. Here we go. And there we go. Okay. Does that show up on your screen? Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're going to talk today about the Maiman style of Viking art. So Viking art is roughly divided up into 7 different eras, roughly divided by time frame. They overlap some, and these are not set in stone, pun intended. But today we're going to talk about the Maiman, which is from 950 to 1025. And so they occurred at specific points in time in history, but really what defines them is characteristics about that art style that are unique to that one, and they're shared kind of commonly across other things. As Viking art progressed, it started off very geometric, and over time it ended up being very fluid and freeform. And this is about middle of the way of the road with that transition. This is one of my favorite. When I first started drawing Viking artwork stuff, I wanted stuff that was recognizable, and this is, I think, the best example of that, of animals and creatures that are recognizable to us for what they are. And we'll see that as we go through and look at some of the examples of that they have some natural shape to them. This was actually the first one I started off looking at and trying to understand. And that's where I realized that what I like about the Viking art stuff is that most of them have rules. They have methods for how to make a design and what goes into that, and that's what causes it to fit into one category. But that makes it easier to learn because there's rules and you can follow them. And then you just have to learn to manipulate those rules to be whatever you want to do. Okay, so yeah, this is Maiman is 950 to 1025. So the Maiman is a settlement. It's actually a grave, the Maiman grave in Jutland, Denmark. And this is the Maiman axe head, which is what the style is named for. It's an iron, or I think it's iron or steel axe head, and it's inlaid with silver inlay. It's really pretty. It's got most of the design elements on it. This is the one side of it that has vegetation kind of designs and flows on it. This is a drawing of both sides of it. There is the one side on the bottoms that we looked at that has the vine work that's interlaced, and then the other side has a bird on it. and with the spiral hip that you can see. And then if you look at the handle, you also see there are what in this style they call a mask. So it's basically a face shown from the front on. And so this was the original, what the style is named for. There are more, better, clearer examples of what makes up the style that we'll get into. This is the biggest example, like physical size. I don't know if you look just to the left of this picture, you see there's a guy standing back there. So this is the greater gelling stone. It's so it's, I think, like 8 feet tall. It's a giant stone in Jutland, Denmark. And the other part of this stone, there's 2 of them. The smaller one, it actually has the best preserved runes, where we learned about runes basically from the Vikings. This one, it's kind of this example that we're looking at right now is the bigger of the stones and has the really good style of the Maiman style on it. And this is the first great beast battling a serpent. It's kind of hard to see on this. The next image shows it a little bit more clearly, but there's basically a big animal fighting a serpent on this. And this was a theme that really developed, and it started with this piece and then went further on throughout the rest of the Viking styles. The Ringerike and the Ernest style especially have this battle between beast or birds and snakes. It's a really common theme in it. And it works out fun too, because snakes are really easy to draw because they're just a ribbon and they just curl around. So this is what the other side, or the line drawing of it. So you can see a little clearer the animal, and then he's got a snake wrapped around his neck with his head is kind of the diamond pointed thing. On the other side of this stone is actually unique to Viking art, is a Christian depiction of Christ with the Viking knotwork around it as well. This stone was put up to commemorate the Christianization of the Danes by Harold the Bluetooth. And so that's why why it's shown up on here. And that's about the time that this art started to really take off. This is one of the prettiest examples by far. This is called a Bamberg casket. When we say casket in this sense, it means box and not thing that you put a dead person in. This is like a small jewelry box size type thing. There aren't very good pictures of the artwork this is the best that I've been able to find that show the details of it. But this is it's a square box. The lid has 4 triangles, and then there's, I think, 3 panels on each side going around it. And each of them has some animal or depiction from Viking artwork in it that's carved. They're actually ivory panels. I think these are walrus ivory that are carved into it. And this is a really pretty example of it. And then the next one is the one we're going to spend most of the time looking at today, because there's so many good examples from it. So this is called a caiman casket. Once again, this is a box, not like a coffin. This one comes from Poland. It's carved ivory as well, or elk antler on the panels with gold bars around it. This is, unfortunately, this one has been destroyed. It was destroyed during World War II, but they made lots of replicas of it and good drawings of it beforehand. So we have a really good record of what's on there. There are a ton of different designs on it. And this was where I first started, because I could look at it. And this was all done by one artist or one group of artists, or it was one project done at one time. So everything follows the same rules, the same format, and the same style, which makes it nice and easy to pick out the differences. It's let's see, yeah. So this is a line drawing of all the different designs that are on this box. So there are quite a few. There's actually 4 different motifs that are used a lot in this style, and you can see them all here. So the first one is called a beast. In Viking artwork, it's difficult to distinguish one type of animal from another. So they're largely grouped into beast and birds. Beasts have 2 to 4 legs, and birds have 1 to 2 legs and wings and feathers. And that's kind of the difference. You can see some of the different pieces, make one stand out. Like this has a beak, so that helps it be a bird. If you look at this one, there's actually two different kinds of animals on here. One is a lion and one is a horse or some kind of hoofed animal. They guess that this is because it represents, this probably held a book of the Gospels. So the four, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and each of them are signified. Luke is an eagle, Mark is a lion. I don't remember whatever. One is a horse, and then the other one is the mask. I can't remember which one. It's supposed to be whatever, but they're symbolized here. So you see the beasts are there. The birds are also on here too in lots of different shapes. And then there are masks, which you can see kind of the center two top middle ones are the mask, which is a face-on view. It's commonly called a mask, or I don't know if it's supposed to be a person. I haven't really got much into that style or to that part of drawing, so I'm not exactly sure how all those work. But we'll get into that. And then the other one that we start to see in this era that goes on further is vegetation or vegetal vines and that kind of thing. You can see those kind of on the second row on the ends. There's just pretty ornaments of vines, and they're very organic. So those kind of the four things, and they're all represented here, and they're all fairly easy to figure out what is going on. So there's also some suspicion that this box and the other one, the Bramberg one that we looked at, were made by the same artist or group of artists or the same workshop, because they are very similar in their construction and their design. So, okay, so that's just kind of an overview of where it fits into the Viking art style historically. From here, the next phase that it went to was the ringer rake style, which is very similar to this, but fancier. It has a lot of spirals and spiky bits shooting off of the animals. And the one that was prior to this is the gelling style, which is very, very blocky and formulaic. So that's kind of where it fits into here. So now we're going to talk about a historical example, and we're going to talk about the construction methods that go into it. So I'm going to have to switch my camera here. So bear with me 1 second. Okay, can you guys hear me now? Okay, good. Sorry. All right. Okay, I'm stopped there. So this is I'm going to kind of, if you have that class handout handy, you might look, we're going to basically run through that and point out the things that we talk about on that handout. We're going to talk about them on this example. So this is a bird that comes off of the Cayman casket. This is on one of the end panels, and this one is really simple, which makes it easy to see what's going on, which is probably what I like most about it. So we talked first about the 4 different composition types. We just kind of went over that. So this one's a bird, obviously. And what is largely different is I say it's a natural shape in an unnatural posture. So if you look at this, it looks like a bird. It's got a beak, it's got kind of a strong chest, it's got wings and feathers and talons. It looks like a bird. If you look at this example here, this is a beast, right? Some kind of an, I don't know, horse, tiger, wolf. They're all kind of look the same, but it's got 4 legs, it's got a face, it's got a big barrel chest and a tail, and they're in the right places and relatively proportional, much more so than any of the other animals of the time. But they're pretty unnatural shapes, positions. So like this is a good example also of them. You can see these birds, like their heads are bent around backwards. They don't look natural. They look very just displayed in unnatural positions, mostly with whatever fits the space that they're filling. So you know, this beak is turned around this way because it fits well on the panel is why I think it was done that way. But what's nice about that though is this helps to make it usable for us in the SCA. In the SCA, we do so much stuff that is heraldry related, and Viking era persona people always want to have, like, can I have a Viking whatever? And that's when I got started. It was like, I want a Viking Centurion eagle. So I wanted something that looked like an eagle, that looked like a line with knots and stuff on it. So this was the first thing that I could find that looked like an eagle, and I could make into a heraldic display that still looked Viking era. So, and this is when you start looking at it, it looks really complicated, but the entire design is, to think about it, it's one ribbon, one loop of ribbon is this entire thing. So if you start off, we'll just pick here on the shoulder, and if you follow this ribbon, and that's what I'm calling this outside kind of band, a ribbon, it goes around here through the eye, through the beak, the lower beak, comes down here. It's kind of hard to, you lose track of it a little bit going underneath this, the other wing here, or the tail feathers, but it zigzags back and forth. It comes back up here. It goes into this spiral. It comes out. From there, it goes into this spiral. I skipped this. It goes through this loop here. Anyways, comes out of that spiral, comes back down here, goes into this spiral, does this leg, and comes back around. So if you sit there and you trace it out, it is one continuous loop. If you could make this out of a rubber band that you basically just stretched into the shape. And then, so that leads to these, the feathers on this are basically, they're two ribbons folded back over. So here is one feather here. And you look, it's a ribbon that comes out and turns and comes back in. And so there's three of those here. And then, like, so this is another ribbon here. It's kind of hard to pick out, but this is, so there's two ribbons, they go together and they go over this wing, under this wing, and then they end up in this little terminal down here. And this terminal is the same thing where we've just expanded that ribbon out to make the shape that we want. So it's got these little fun decorative nubby bits on it. And then the inside of it is filled with texture. If you look on the carved ones, it looks like they took some kind of a round hole and punched it to give this texture. But that distinguishes what's on the inside from the outside. It makes it a little easier to figure out what's happening there. And so that's basically how it's made. Once I finally, that clicked in my head, it got to be where it's easier to figure these out. The construction method. And you'll see that especially when we get to the head and the feet, that there are some, that principle is applied to it to make the design come out how you want it to be. So the other thing that's really prominent, and you could see that when we looked at all the examples earlier from the casket, is these spirals. They're the biggest, boldest thing on the design. And those typically represent shoulders or hips. They're a big joint in the animal's body. And they also follow the same ribbon. They're basically where two ribbons come together and spiral together in this kind of stylistic way. You'll see those a lot. Sometimes they're clockwise, sometimes they're counterclockwise, sometimes they're bigger, sometimes they're smaller, but they're really, really pretty common. Not all of them have them. Some of the smaller examples don't, but all the big ones have at least one. Another thing you'll notice, and this is the terminology that I've kind of found and started using, is to call these pellets. So this little area here, this area here, here's one too. And what that is, in my mind, I think of it as, if this is a ribbon, that's where you would tie that ribbon together to hold them close to each other. That's how I visualize it. They're more just a stylistic element, part of the design that shows up. Here's one here on the beak. There's no rule to where they go. It's anywhere that it looks good to have the ribbon basically look like it's been pinched. And then there's these bigger ones associated with the spirals as well. And you'll see that when we start drawing it, those end up having to be a little bit bigger. Does that make sense? How it's one loop, the outside is one continuous loop. Is that nod our heads? Yes. Okay, so that's that was my biggest breakthrough with it, was figuring that out. The other thing that you'll find, and this is true for just about every Viking artwork style, is that when things are interlaced or interwoven, they follow the over-under pattern. So this wing goes under this wing. This little tendril goes over this wing, under this wing. So these are generally simple enough. Some of the more complicated ones have like where the snake is intertwined with a tail or something like that. It crosses over quite a bit. But that's generally it, but it typically follows the over-under pattern. That pattern gets broken sometimes if the design, if you end up, basically if you have a split in your design, it'll do that. But so that's generally the rules for it. We're going to go the head and the spirals. We're going to draw those and get into a little bit more detail with those. How are we doing time-wise? Okay, so we're good. We still got like 40 minutes. Is that right? 35. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. So we're gonna get started drawing now. So you guys have stuff and you want to draw along. That works out well. Let's see. So can you guys see if I draw there? Does that show up for you? My little pencil squiggle?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? I joined late and you mentioned a handout and I didn't see it on the Facebook page.
If you look at
you have,
if you look in the chat, there's a link to it there.
okay, thanks.
No problem.
If you came in late, it may not show up. You may need to repost it.
Okay. Let me do that.
Oh, it's on the chat. Yeah, they disappear if they only show what is on the chat when you join in. Thanks. Got it.
Cool. And I guess I should mention this before we get too far into it. At the bottom of that handout, there's a website, jonaslauwerksen.com. Jonas is somewhere in Scandinavia, is an artist that has made a really great website. He's got a free ebook that's available on that website that really, I've learned so much from him about the different styles of artwork and how the Viking and how to draw them, how to design them, examples of them in period. If you're interested in this at all, that is the first place you should go to check out. And if you Google Viking art styles, it probably is the first place because it's the best. He's got super detailed, very easy to understand drawings and examples. His book is great. I've got it right here, the Anatomy of the Viking Art. It's a wonderful resource. I would check it out. He's also got a YouTube channel that is, he's getting more and more stuff put on there as well. If you sign up for it, he sends you either most of them are period designs that he has done, scanned or drawn in a computer so that they're very easy to understand and see what's going on. That he sends out one of those every week, every Wednesday. You get an email from it. So if you're interested in that stuff at all, definitely check him out. If you're into it more, his Patreon account, you can sign up with Patreon, and he's got some really good detailed tutorials in there as well that are kind of beyond the paywall. But to me, I think they're worth it. So that's my shameless plug for him. I guess not shameless, but okay. So now I'm going to start drawing. My plan was to draw a bird of some kind, and we'll talk about it as we go. So, like I said, they generally take a fairly naturalistic shape to them. So this is just kind of this is probably really faint to see. This is just kind of a nice curve that I'm going to follow with my general design with a barrel chest. And we're going to put some wings up here, and we'll add more to that. I know that's really hard to see. It'll show up once we start drawing. So let's talk about the head. The head is one of my favorite things about this. They have this really cool way of drawing an eye. It's very unique. So the heads are generally done in profile. There are a few examples where it's turned to face you in that mask kind of style. But most of them have a profile, and they have this teardrop shaped eye that is drawn with the negative space from the ribbon. So you can see it in the handout, but I'll just kind of show you how I start this. And as I draw, I just start a ribbon and I start drawing it, and I'll go all the way around and I'll connect it back as we go. So I'm going to start off with, here's my ribbon. They stay generally about the same width throughout the drawing, but you will find, especially when you're doing the detail pieces like the heads and the feet, that they will get smaller or bigger as needed to make it work, but they're generally about the same size. So I'm going to call this folded back. So here's like a lip, it comes down, turns around and folds back on itself. And then we'll turn it in here, and we'll go up to make the top part. This is going to be like an eagle or something like that. So it's going to have a very strong beak to it here. So we're going to continue this ribbon around this way. And this is where you can really kind of add your own style, or you can make something look particularly like something. Like if you wanted to make a pelican, you could draw a beak that looked like a pelican. Or if you're drawing a lion, you can do a mane around it with these little details like this. So it comes back around here, and then I just kind of put these in if I know I'm going to put them. So I'm going to put a little pellet there that would hold that part together. And then this is just the coolest little thing to me because it looks so mean and so fierce, is this loop the ribbon back around, and this negative space here becomes an eye and a really strong forehead as you fold it back. And so there is basically how you do a head. And then you can add more to it. So if we wanted to add some feathers to it, a lot of the beasts will have like even though it's not like a long tendril comes out of the top. Sometimes they'll have just little short ears. Sometimes they'll have a long ribbon that goes around. Some of the birds have that too. So we might actually do that. So on this, so I'm just going to leave it blank for now. So what this would be a ribbon that goes out, and it's going to come back in, and we'll deal with it here in a minute. And then let me get out of your way. I'm trying to not draw on the camera. Way. So, and you can put a little ball terminal on the end like this, comes back around, something like that. So if you look, that's been just one ribbon that started here and worked its way all the way around to here. Just imagine that this continues. It could curve around like this and stop, but I'm going to probably add a little extra loop-de-bit once we get going. Okay, so now I'm going to come down and draw the body, the shape of it. It's going to be a natural kind of, if you think about what makes a bird look like a bird, they've got a big chest and wings, right? That's pretty much the definition of it. So that's what I'm going to try and emulate here. I'm going to put a big barrel chest on it and bring it back around. And we're going to draw this, bring it around this way. Okay. All right, we'll keep following as we go along here. So now I'm going to put a wing on that kind of comes up this way and goes back around down the back side here. Most of the time the wings have the spiral, so we're going to talk about those just a little bit. So the spirals typically span across the body, or at least across the piece. So if I start it here, it should probably touch somewhere down here as well. And they generally start where there's a change in the structure of the animal. So where a leg starts, where a wing starts, where the tail comes off, something like that. They're not just kind of randomly inserted. They're generally part of the anatomy of the animal. So typically shoulders, and hips is mostly where you see them. So I've kind of outlined these steps in the handout. The spirals are weird and hard to get your brain wrapped around what's happening. What I first did when I started drawing this was I took period examples and I copied them and I put them on my design. I'm like, oh, that works. And then I got looking more and I kind of figured out the construction method for it. So a lot of times we're going to design. So here's going to be where the other ribbon, so it's going to come in and go out right here. And I'm going to draw the spiral here. So this is going to go into the wing. It'll be part of that. So it's going to take a sharp 90-degree turn when we start. This is pretty common. Sometimes you might have them, actually, I got this example here. On this one, that doesn't take a sharp turn because this part and this part are parallel to each other. These both ribbons come into the spiral parallel, but it's not uncommon at all for them to come in at a 90 degree like that. You can see in this example here that it comes in and it turns a sharp turn. So that's pretty common, especially if you're trying to do a bolder or a bigger change in it. So this ribbon is going to take a hard 90-degree turn. Sorry, this ribbon is going to take a 90-degree turn. And you're basically going to make one big loop through here and end up parallel to this other ribbon. Not adjacent to it, but parallel to it. And when you do that, you're going to try and get close to and touch any of these other sides that you think you're going to. And it kind of spirals in. So here I've ended this line parallel to this one. And then I'll continue the other part of this. There we go. Okay. So that's kind of the first chunk of it. And then we're going to draw, I call it a large pellet because it spans what it would essentially be 3 different widths of ribbon. So this ribbon, this void here, and then the one we just drew. And then this piece is or the innermost part is going to curl around, depending upon how much room you have, maybe half a turn, maybe up to a full turn extra. And so that's it. It's fairly simple once you do it. But working it out is a little hard. That's the best system that I can get for it. I think we'll draw another one down here in a minute to try it again. And if you look though, one ribbon came out, one ribbon came out, or came in, one came out. So we need to, all right, so now we're gonna draw the wing. And the wings on the animals, they typically use that folded repetitive pattern that we talked about. So I'm gonna, let's see, I'm gonna draw this wing kind of swooping to the back here. Yeah, we'll do it this way. So it's gonna start, do something like that. Yeah, that looks good. So we draw a ribbon out, and then we're going to turn it back around on itself, fold it back, and come back in. As you get doing this, you can end up opening the space in between these. Like if you wanted to go like that, you could do that. And this would be an inside space that you would fill with texture. If you need to do that to add thickness to it, that's totally, there's examples of that in the period ones too. But most of the time they have these really parallel, long, flowy, wavy kind of lines, kind of dictates what's happening here. And then, so this is going to turn around again. And so you can see the same thing once again. We're kind of mirroring what's happening here on this wing. So the ribbon goes out, turns around, comes back in, turns around. And and that's how you make the feathers. So you're going to end up with always an even number of ribbons on each of these kind of thread, because by the time you go out, you have to come back in, and it always ends up being even. And you can actually add some detail here if you wanted to be pointy on the end like that. You could do that. A lot of them, that one example we just looked at earlier, actually had one of these that turned into a long tendril at one point that comes off of just one of them. Okay. So now this ribbon comes off here, and tell you what, we're going to butt it next to this one on the spiral. So we'll join that with the pellet there. Actually, you know what, while we think about it, we're going to put a pellet over here too. And we'll come back. Let's draw, I'm going to draw a foot down here, and we'll add another tail feather too. So we're going to do another spiral, and we're going to have a leg that's coming in this way. So this is going to take that 90-degree turn again. I'm going to draw the outside loop. So you can see here, this ribbon is going to come in, turn, loop around, and parallel this one here. So it comes in, loops around. And parallels this line here. I'm going to extend this one around, follow the same course here. I'm going to draw my big pellet that covers 1, 2, 3 widths. And then I'll loop that spiral around. So that's how you do it. And then now you've got another ribbon coming out that you can continue your design with. So here I'm going to put this is going to be a leg. So the other one's going to come, you know, it's going to come up and join this too. So we're going to have 2 ribbons that come down and form the leg. And I'm going to put a pellet on it like that. We're going to start this one. So this is one of the ones where it really gets crowded and cramped because you're putting a whole bunch of folds really tight together. If you look at the example on the handout, I'll show you how I did it there. Some of these are talons that have big claws. Some of them are hooves. Some of them have toes. But they're all basically a ribbon, the same idea, a ribbon folded over on itself. So this first ribbon is going to come out like this and turn up, and it'll stop and fold back on itself. And I'm going to make it pointed, kind of like we did over here. I'm going to make it pointed. Then we're going to do another one. And so this ribbon needs to follow around, curve in this way. There we go. And then, see, this is where it, like I say, it ends up, you either get really big dorky looking ones or you make really small looking ribbons. So I'm going to make these tighter so that it looks a little more natural shape here. So this ribbon comes up, turns back there, and it comes in. So if you look here, this area here is not part of the ribbon, so that would get texture, or for right now I just shaded it in just to make it pretty easy to see. But if you look, it's a ribbon that goes all the way around and adds to that, that element of the design. And then let's see, we're going to continue this up here, and I'm going to have another set of tail feathers come off of here. And I'm going to have them loop, kind of run out of space. So I'm going to just have it loop around. Tell you what, we're going to do a tail rather than tail feathers. So So we're just gonna make this long double ribbon tendril. We'll turn into a tail there. And then this one can just connect back to the body over here. And we'll put a pellet there. So you'll notice what I'm gonna do, I'm doing this in pencil first. So I'm just gonna draw all my ribbons overlapping each other so that I can go back then and work out the details of the interlacing of what goes over and what goes down. So now if you look at this, this is basically one ribbon. It's got two openings here. I'm gonna connect this ribbon back to this one and this one back to this one. But other than that, it's one piece that goes all the way around. And then we would fill in basically all this area here, here, this little bit in here, this little bit in here, would all get texture. When if I'm making something like this to look nice, I'll draw it and I'll sketch it first like this, and then I'll go back through and ink it once I get my design perfect. But that just kind of gives you an idea of the solid parts of it. A lot of the period ones, the casket ones there, they all have another texture on the background that's different. That kind of makes it blend together. Okay, so let's just kind of play with this tail. And this is sometimes the fun part, sometimes the really confusing part about what do I want this tail to what do I want these ribbons to do. So one thing that you'll note, there are different ways to draw ribbons. So there's basically two different thoughts. So one is you can draw a ribbon that loops back onto itself and that crosses and it turns in the same direction. So this is pretty common for this type of style, where these loops are all in the same direction. So if you think about it, if you're driving down this in a car, it's like NASCAR. You're only turning left. You're only turning left. So that's how this style works. There's other ways of doing this. A more complicated one is where these start to interlace. That's a pretzel knot. So you can kind of see it would be the same thing. You would basically do this and loop over itself. You start to see this more as you get in later period stuff. And then the earnest style has a very particular one. Every time in there, it's a figure of 8 loop, or basically a left-hand turn and a right-hand turn. So if you're to do that one, it looks pretty much like that every time. You basically keep crossing. And that's how you end up with the earnest ones. So this is what we're after with this design is continual loops that don't interact with each other of their own one. But if there was, say, a snake coming in, or a serpent, or the head and the tail are interacting, those could interact, but they would loop in the same direction. So you might have something that looks like, I started the wrong way. Yeah, there we go. Something that looks like that. So you could have them interacting, but it would be two different lines that are interacting versus being the same line interacting with itself. And like I said, every one of these rules, there's perfect, like there's examples, period examples that break it, that don't follow these rules. But in general, I find if I aim for the basic core of a principle of the design of the style, and I follow the rules, I'm more in line with it than trying to be creative and break the rules. But sometimes you have to. So, okay, so we're gonna come out here. I'm gonna loop it graceful. Well, let's see here. Yeah, let's do this. We're gonna, no, like I said, sometimes this is the hard part. We're gonna loop around here. I'm gonna come back through the body. I'll do one loop here, and we'll call that good. So that's gonna be what the tail is gonna do. And then I'm gonna have the head, or this big long feathered tendril off the head is gonna do a similar thing. We're gonna come, let's see here. It's gonna loop back through here. And we'll call that good. So, oh, we've only got 10 minutes. Okay, I better get into gear here. So we'll just sketch this this out. I'm getting a little messy here, but so this will be the same double ribbon idea, fold it back on itself. One thing you'll find when you start doing these is when you cross two ribbons over like this, there needs to be a gap between them. So this ribbon needs to be able to go that way. If they don't cross fully over, you can't interlace them. So there needs to be a gap. These could touch, but this line can't be over that line when you draw it. Otherwise you can't figure out which one's on top because it changes halfway through. So. Okay, so then, like I said, this one's a little rough. There's a couple different ways to end the terminals, or to have the terminals. The most common one is kind of like we did with this feather over here, where it just loops around and it's curved, or like a half circle. That's really common, but there are some that do more fancy things. So you can have things that look where a ribbon comes through like this, and it goes out, and it could be something like that, right? So this is going to be like a lion's tail or something, right? The snake head actually, and you'll see that the serpent head looks very similar to this. They just put eyes on it like that to make it be a snake. We'll draw this other one. I'll show you a different kind of style there. So, all right. So I'm going to draw this ribbon, connects here. And we're going to put some, this is actually one of the ones I've kind of started messing with that I really like. This little end looks like a leaf. So we'll go curl the ribbon back around here. This one will go there. That kind of a little deal. So, so now the whole thing, all the ribbons are drawn, it all connects, and every piece is there. Now, if I was gonna, the next step would be to figure out where is it going to, where do the ribbons cross and where do they interlace? So I just pick one that I know I want to do. So like, let's say that I want to make this tail go behind the body. I'll start there. And so I'm going to make the tail, we'll follow it. The tail goes under the body. That means it's going to go over the wings here and under the wings here. So it goes over and then here. I just erase and draw these back in and under there. So this tail, if it went under, now it's going to go over there. I want to erase pretty well. So it went over, so now it's going to go under. It went under, so now it's going to go over. And then look, it worked out right. It goes under again. So this one, so now we're going to start this other tail. We know that this part is what we want it to be. So this ear or head tendril, whatever you call it, went under, so it's going to go over. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's it for this one. So there's not a whole lot of interlacing. It's a lot simpler than it's actually the simplest of all of the Viking styles. The Ernest one, the later period one, has a ton of interlacing, and it's very organic. The earlier ones are super geometric, and that's kind of, if you've seen like Celtic knotwork, where it's very geometric and they're crossed at 90 degrees, interlacing. Still uses the same principle as this. This one is just a lot more free flow. So,
question: Do you ever see where the ribbons themselves actually interlace?
the ribbons,
Like, okay, so where you have 4 ribbons technically crossing.
like here. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever see that go over, under, and weave through?
No, I don't think there's one in the Maiman style. I know there is an example in the Ringer rig stuff. Oh, see, if only I had my book from Jonas Lars Works handy. Oh, I do. So this is not a period example. This is what he did. But if you look, there is that kind of stuff that does happen sometimes in that style here. So you can see like it's splayed out, and there's this other piece that weaves through it. So that does sometimes happen. Trying to think, none of the other birds do that.
So I guess what I'm asking is, like below the beak where we have the 2 rings intersecting, do you ever see a doubled ribbon split into its component ribbons for interlacing?
You mean
No.
like a braid, sort of, almost a braid look?
To where one of them will go between the 2.
Right.
Like I see what
And
you're saying.
it would make, yeah, it would make like a little like.
You're asking, let's say I had this.
Mhm.
Here's one, and here's another. You're asking, does it ever do, like, does it ever, let's see, this one goes on top. Does it ever split and one goes over and one goes under? Is that what you're asking?
Right, kind of like that, yeah. Like make a little basket weave at that intersection.
I don't think I've ever seen that. Yeah, it would look kind of like that. Yeah, something like that. How am I drawing around? Yeah, it would look something like that. I've never seen that in a period one. Largely because they treat this rib like a double ribbon, I would call it here. They treat that as one thing. And so it doesn't do that. Okay. And part of that is, if you think about if you expanded this out, do I have a picture of that? Yeah, here. So sometimes, and we didn't talk about this, but if you look at this ribbon here, you'll see that it's a double ribbon, but it's just wide enough that there's a little bit of texture that goes through it, right? You see that there and here. The serpents are oftentimes done that same way too. I don't have a good picture of that here. But yeah, so like this one here has the double ribbon, but it has one little row of dots in between it. And so what I'm calling the ribbon here, they're treating it as a bigger, wider, flat piece of ribbon, if that makes any sense.
It does, thanks.
Yeah.
Quick question. Where you showed a casket earlier, which I presume is the wood, was this design element used on other things? I've seen stone carvings,
So,
but I was wondering if metal work or wood carvings. Yeah.
So the most common one, there are some wood carvings done this way. The hard thing is wood typically doesn't survive.
Correct. Yeah.
There is so the best examples are the carved ivory. There is the one we showed at the very beginning. The Maiman axe is actually done in silver inlay in a steel or iron axe head. So it is done that way. I don't know of any jewelry that is done in this motif. So like
well, I wasn't thinking, I guess, so much as jewelry, but more of a metallic applique that is then attached to something else like wood or
I've not seen that. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist.
Right.
There are also, from this time period, is actually one of the very few embroideries that exist is it's in the mask format. It's a chain of like faces that link together. It's one of the only Viking embroideries that exist is from the Maiman style. It doesn't have this beast and bird motif kind of stuff, but it has but it's the front on face, but it still fits in with this, and it's the same thing that you see on that casket that I showed earlier. The same kind of mask on it. I'm trying to think what else I've seen.
Well, and they keep finding things. So
I need to give you an end of class warning, I believe. It runs till 12:20.
Gotcha. So I guess I will show you. It's hard to embroider with this. So I started with this I wanted to have a centurion eagle that I could do. And so I have a cloak that's made this way, but it's hard to do an embroidery because there's so many details that don't carry over to embroider very well. So this was my first design that I did that has the spirals and the tendrils coming around and the long wings. And then I just added a star in the middle of it, which is not period, but looks cool. So
I wonder if you wouldn't do better doing a tacking down a cord, since it is basically just a long ribbon.
yeah, I've thought about doing that, about like couching a thread all the way along. That's how that one started off. But it didn't, my threads they were too small. So it's on my list of things to figure out how to do.
Time to make a ton of whipcord.
There you go. So, but yeah, so anyways, that's kind of just an intro to it. I hope you guys give it a shot, try it out. Did you guys did people draw along? Did I draw too fast? It's kind of hard to.
Well,
I did.
along.
Oh, okay. So
I did go and pull up that website that you mentioned, and he's got a ton of images there.
yeah,
His book is not that expensive. It's only they've got a paperback and a hardback version, and it's anywhere from $15 to $25. So it's not bad.
And that's like the printing cost of it.
Right, and it's free on the online website.
Free online. So yeah, the one I have actually I got years ago before he had it available for purchase, and so I just downloaded it and went and printed it because I was like, I kept going to his website. I'm like, I just want to have this handy. So
right. The website, Amazon has it listed as a second edition, so you may. Yeah,
there is an update. It's the same artworks in it. It's got more details about it, but yeah, definitely check him out.
Oh, Willow's design.
Oh,
It's not great, but it's a design.
there you go.
For a quickie hour.
Yeah, thank you. It was really good.
Well, if you guys have any questions or any follow-up, I'll put my email in the chat real quick, just in case you guys have any questions or about it at all, let me know. I like talking about it. It's lots of fun. So, well, I'll put it in the chat.
Well, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording at this point.
Okay.
Oh.